You hear me. Thank you, Deborah. And you hear me. Awesome. Welcome, Bob. We've still got a couple more minutes to let people in. Not that we ever stop anybody from coming in, obviously. Oh, thank you, Laurel. It's hot. I'm not gonna lie. It's very hot in the UK. And we're really not very good at very hot in the UK. We don't do hot well. Hey, Kimmy. Hey, Amy. Anne. Look, this is how hot it is. I have an ice pack up the back of my t-shirt because I'm dying. And I've got a fan in front of me. So if you're wondering why the kind of windswept, I'm in a tunnel, look. And apologies if you can hear the low drone of the fan. Oh, we love our piggy shirts. I am going to get round to making some midnight cafe shirts with this and mamacitas and all the good stuff. But I'm just not getting around to doing anything quickly. Hey, Nita. Alrighty. I like the sunshine. I just find it a little bit difficult because it's a little bit hot, and we're not set up for the hot weather in the UK. Hey, Belinda. Hey, Nero. Good to see you again. Had a wonderful time on Neuro's show yesterday. Such a fantastic space for anyone who's exploring anything to do with the inner workings of their mind, just to be with non-judgmental people, to be able to explore that in a safe space. It's really, really awesome. I had a great time with Laura Not Luma. Alrighty, it's nearly time for kickoff. Have I missed anyone? Belinda. Did I say Belinda? I said Belinda, didn't I? I'm repeating myself now. A swamp cooler. I would like a swamp cooler. Seattle. Wow. That's Washington, I believe, the state, not the DC. As I've mentioned before to anyone who's been on here before, my American geography is only as good as the crime shows that I watch. That's literally the expanse of what I've heard of. Oh, and a few, because I achieved sobriety through Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm familiar with an awful lot of fantastic people with long-term sobriety in the United States, where AA is much more of a, yeah, do it or don't do it. You know, it's there. You can do it. Nobody minds. Whereas here it's like, oh, you're one of those. But it's fine. I've been one of those for 22 years now, and it's serving me very well. But yeah, there are some places like Billings, Montana. There's a great speaker from Billings. There's a great speaker from somewhere in Colorado. I forget where in Colorado. Obviously, where it all began, Akron, Ohio. So yeah, I just wander around the United States. Hey, Jan. Hey, Wisconsin. Oh, we've got Wisconsin zebra. You must be related. I'm messing, obviously. It's like people say, "Oh, you live in London. Do you know?" Yeah, it's quite a big place. I probably don't, but maybe. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Oh, 82 degrees. Sorry, Tracy, I got a little bit sidetracked there. That sounds nice. I would like to be outside. It is much cooler outside, but our stone buildings and carpeted throughout does like to hold on to the heat. So the good Pam is here. I think the team is in the house. And anybody who's running late can just join us. Just find a seat at the back. We don't point and make you stay after class. It's not what we're about here. Welcome, though, because it is now midnight. I am still Mama, and we are live on Substack. The cafe is open. So everybody, you know what to do. Pull up your comfy chair or your beanbag. Grab yourself a nice warm milky drink. Jesus, not on this night. If you're needing a warm milky drink, you knock yourselves out. But I am absolutely on the fizzy pop with ice cubes because it's just too flippin' hot. But if you prefer an adult beverage, you know what to do. Wrap yourself in your snuggliest blanket, if that's appropriate, or stick yourself in front of a nice draft like I am, and we shall begin. Water is so much better for you. I got a big telling off from Laura, not Luma, for the amount of Diet Cola I consume. Apparently, 3 liters a day is too much. Who knew, right? But water drinkers out there, Nita and Deborah, I'll have to post a picture of my mint patch. You may have seen my vegetable garden. Hey, Chris. You may have seen my vegetable garden video. That's just starting to come alive. But my mint, oh my God, it's the craziest thing. It was here when we moved in, and I just don't seem to be able to kill it, which is great because it's very nice with a little bit of lemon and some water with some nice ice, and lovely. And there's Laura. We can begin now. Everybody, we've been sitting here waiting for you. Been saying, well, we can't start. I mean, it's 3 minutes past now. What are we going to do? Honestly, that's totally what happened. Please don't watch the video back. Yes. So I even tried so much mint. I even tried sticking out the front. I like wrapped the bottoms in a bit of wet kitchen towel and cellophane and put them out the front with a note to my neighbor saying, please help yourself. Apparently nobody's that big a mint fan, it would seem, but we do what we can, don't we? We try to spread kindness, and you got to want to pick it up, haven't you? And maybe they just don't like mint. So I'm not gonna look too deep into it. Laura, you don't need to read the recording. We've all just been sitting here going, is she coming? Is she going to be here? Because, you know, we need to get started. Honest, I wouldn't lie to you. I'd be in trouble if I did. Are we ready? Are we sitting comfortably? Because if we are, make the most of it. That's about to change. I have decided to tackle a subject which is really quite difficult, and I'm going to tackle it in 3 parts. The first part, we are going to be looking at how the United States has managed to continue slavery just by another name. And then next week, we're going to have a look at the way the Voting Rights Act has been destroyed. And then for paid subscribers, I'm going to do a long article detailing the absolute medical monstrosities that have occurred within the communities of people of color, and why they may well have been just a little skeptical when the government wanted everybody to get vaccines. They have good reason. Now, a few caveats. For those of you watching, you may have noticed I am not a person of color. I barely have any color. I literally have to put color on so that you can't see straight through me. I am very, very aware of that. I am very, very aware that there is an undercurrent of racism that lives deep inside me as a child of the 70s that I have to fight in different degrees to not succumb to, even if it's just, I say just, even if it's prejudices, stereotypes, preconceived ideas, white privilege, and not being aware of my white privilege. These are my big battles. Being mean to people because they're a particular color was never really in my ballpark. Thankfully, I was brought up better than that. But some of those more subtle things, they live inside us, and I find it really uncomfortable to confront that. I don't want to be that kind of person. My beautiful, beautiful one and only biological niece is mixed race, and she's my daughter. I have 2 sons. She's my daughter. She was our first baby. My sister's younger than me. First baby out of the 2 of us, and she's just, I adore her. BIPOC. told us something in the chat, so the better suggestion. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Well, I'm going to use the term Black and minority communities mostly throughout. So I hope that's not offensive to anybody. And I hope that you realize I'm coming from a place as a white British woman. So all of what I'm going to say is research. You know, none of this is my lived experience. I am not going to pretend it is. Maybe because my niece is mixed race, and that's what she calls herself. Before anybody tells me there's a better term for that, she refers to herself as mixed race. So that's good enough for me. Maybe it's just because I'm a decent human being, but I just feel like however loud, powerful, intelligent and wonderful the Black voices, Black and brown voices are in our communities, they need allies too. They can't do it all on their own. And if we're sitting back saying, well, why don't you just sort it all out then isn't that inherent racism? It's certainly not wanting to be a part of the solution. And I would really like to be a part of the solution if I possibly can, because I find it really upsetting the way people treat each other in on lots of different respects. And this is just one of them. And this one has been brought into sharp contrast recently with the Voting Act's abomination from the Supreme Court. Yeah, Trump is encouraging it. And we need to get to a place, if that's ever possible, where nobody in our society votes in a president who is bad for us as individuals because he gives us permission to hate, whoever that may be. I do not give you permission to hate, not anybody. I give you permission to try and make changes so that everybody has the ability to live a decent life without pain or fear, where they can make progress and find enjoyment. And if we can work towards communities where that's happening, I just feel like it might be contagious. Not in a COVID sort of a way. Well, even in a COVID sort of way, let's spread that community mindedness. Let's spread that cooperation. Let's build each other up rather than smashing each other down. I'm fed up with this zero-sum game thinking that if you've got it, then you might have taken it from me. And if you've got it, well, I can't have it unless I take it from you. Why don't we just share it? Or why don't we help each other to get it, whatever it is? Anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a lecture and I apologize for that, but it is a difficult position to come from. I am absolutely not here to tell Black and brown and minority communities how it feels to be them. I am not here to tell them how they can change things to make their lives better. I don't know what it's like to be any color other than this. I don't know what the answers are. But I don't think we learn anything if we don't know what's happened up until this point. And that's what I'd like to share with you, because I wanted to know more. Anyone who's been here before, you know that all my videos, all my interactions with you, all my articles come from a position of me thinking, well, that's interesting. I don't know enough about that. Let me go and find out. And then I come here and I share that with you. And if that's interesting for you too, awesome. If you feel like you've learned something, that is even better. We're all learning together, and I'm going to just keep learning till the day I'm not in a position to learn anymore. But that's not today. So let's do some learning. What do you say? All right. Awesome. So on April the 29th, 2026, we are all very aware that the Supreme Court of the United States handed down its ruling in Louisiana v. Calais. 6 justices in favour, 3 dissenting. And if you already know what that split means in 2026, you already know this is not going to be good news. And it wasn't. The ruling absolutely gutted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. That's the provision that existed specifically to stop states from drawing electoral maps that dilute the voting power of Black and minority communities. That's what it was there for. Louisiana jumped straight on it and has already redrawn its congressional maps so that their previous redrawing to include a second majority Black district is now going to be completely carved up. So that part of the Constitution that was there to protect Black voters has been deemed unconstitutional. And I find that really hard to get my head around. How can this look like anything other than a deliberately discriminatory act? Because I don't know. It doesn't, to me, that's what it looks like. So Justin Levitt, who is an election law expert and was a redistricting advisor in the Biden White House, said, quote, "This is the burn the house down and pretend the house still exists because you can point to the foundation where it used to be." NAACP President Derek Johnson said, quote, "The Supreme Court betrayed Black voters. They betrayed America and they betrayed our democracy." And in Justice Kagan's dissent, the majority opinion rendered Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, quote, "all but a dead letter." Now, a lot of people thought, heard that ruling and thought, I thought we'd move past this racist shit. Well, newsflash, no, we didn't. We just very skillfully rebranded it. And by we, I mean people who look like me. Because here's the thing. This isn't an this isn't an anomaly. See, I can do it. Just need to get the teeth in. This isn't a wobble. This is a system functioning exactly as it was designed. And tonight, we're going to follow that design all the way back to where it started, to a loophole I knew nothing about, hiding in plain sight inside the document that was supposed to set people free. And that is almost the most disgusting part about it. Welcome any new mamacitas. Welcome back to all of you who've been here before. It's so good to have you back. Tonight's explainer is slavery was never abolished. It was just franchised. And yeah, Deborah, what happened in Victoria was appalling. So, part 1, the loophole. So in 1865, the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified. You probably know it as the amendment that abolished slavery. That's what I thought too. If you learned that in school, your teacher wasn't lying to you. They just didn't finish the sentence. And that's the key part. Here's what the 13th Amendment actually says. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Except as a punishment for crime. 4 words. Punishment for crime. Hiding the most celebrated civil rights document in American history. That's where these words are. 4 words that left a door wide open. And I want you to understand that it wasn't left open by accident. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't lazy legislation. This was deliberate. The debates around the drafting of the 13th Amendment weren't secret. Legislators knew exactly what that clause meant. Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts argued strenuously against including it. He wanted an unconditional abolition. No exceptions, no loopholes. He lost. The exception clause itself was modelled on the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, a document written before the Constitution itself, when the farmers were already building in the architecture of conditional freedom. The idea that the state could own your labour as punishment for a crime was not a new idea in 1865. It was a very old one, dusted off and inserted into the amendment that was supposed to end it all. And I think many of us living in bubbles for too long thought it had. And within months, not years, months, Southern states were already constructing the machinery to exploit it. Because here is what the end of the Civil War actually meant in practical terms for the former Confederate states. It meant 4 million people who had been property were now legally people. It meant an agriculture economy built entirely on forced labour had just lost that labour overnight. It meant white landowners, politicians, and businessmen were looking at an economic model that had collapsed and looking for a way to rebuild it. The 13th Amendment gave them that. They just needed to make sure that enough black people were criminals. So they got to work. And it is as despicable as that I made that sound. Part 2, the Black Codes. Now, I studied 20th century American history as part of my A-levels, which is the highest school level qualification you can do in the UK. I'd never heard of the Black Codes. So what are they? Well, between 1865 and 1866, in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, Southern states began passing a series of laws collectively known as the Black Codes. And I want to walk you through what these laws actually said, because the details matter. The details are the receipts. Mississippi was among the first. The Mississippi Black Code of 1865 required all Black residents to present written evidence of employment at the start of every year. If you didn't have it, if you were between jobs, if you'd just been freed from a plantation and hadn't yet found work, if you were simply trying to figure out what freedom meant, you could be arrested for vagrancy, convicted, and hired out to a white employer who would pay your fine in exchange for your labour. Oh, wow, Survivor's story. That's not a shock, but still shocking, if that makes sense. I've learned so much that just leaves me, and I sort of feel a bit guilty for that, for not knowing. But every day I'm trying to do something about the stuff that I don't know, and I'll keep going until I know everything. So this could take a while. Not tonight, obviously, but you know, my life's work of learning the stuff I don't know. So, just to recap, freed from slavery. Free. Yay, woohoo, we're free. Then arrested for being unemployed, sold back into labour, all within the same calendar year. That's not sounding to me as free as you might think it should be. So the Mississippi Black Codes of 1865. Mississippi's vagrant law, which was passed in November 1865, required Black residents to carry written proof of employment. Those without it could be arrested, fined, and hired out to an employer to pay that fine. The employer then held a claim on their labor. It gets worse. Orphaned or parentless Black children could be apprenticed to white employers. Former enslavers were given preference because, well, they need to be made whole first, don't they? In bizarro world. South Carolina's Black Codes went further. They created a system of labor contracts that bound Black workers to white employers for set periods. If you left before your contract was up, for any reason, including that your employer was abusing you, you forfeited your wages and could be forcibly returned. You could also be arrested. And if you wanted to work in any occupation other than farmer or servant, you needed to get a special license that what, everybody? Cost money. And most people just didn't have the money. So they didn't have the choice. Louisiana's codes required Black workers to sign annual labor contracts by the second week of January. I've still got my fucking Christmas tree up in the second week of January, but all of the Black Louisianans had to sign these labor contracts for the whole year within the first 2 weeks of January. If you missed that window, you're not just out of a job, you could be arrested. You see, there's a pattern forming here. The contracts themselves stipulated that workers could not leave the premises without permission, could not keep visitors without permission, and had to be, and I am quoting the language directly, quote, respectful in deportment. Failing to be respectful in deportment at the sole discretion of your employer was grounds for dismissal without pay and potential arrest. Exactly. In Alabama, let's go to Alabama first. Sorry, Laura. I mean, next, not even first, because we've been going around the southern states. In Alabama, Black children could be apprenticed, in inverted commas, to white employers without parental consent, if a court deemed that their parents were unable to support them. Former enslavers, obviously, given preference to these apprenticeships. This one really hits me hard. Parents who had just been freed from slavery had their children legally removed and returned to the same people who'd previously enslaved the family, but this time with the blessing of the court. Thank you, Beverly. These laws were not fringe measures. These were not the horrible exceptions. They weren't the work of a few bad actors. They were passed by state legislatures, signed by governors, enforced by police and courts. They were the law. And when the federal government, under Reconstruction, moved to dismantle them, southern states simply got more creative. And we've seen how creative these lawmakers can be when they want to be. If you couldn't arrest someone just for being Black and unemployed, which was becoming less of a thing, simply arrest them for something else. Petty theft, gambling, loud behavior. Jesus Christ, I'd spend my whole life in jail. There are documented cases of black men being arrested for, quote, using obscene language, end quote, in the presence of white women. You want to know what the obscene language was? It was the man's name because he had not addressed the woman as ma'am. I have all the receipts because I couldn't believe this shit either. Oh, Pam puts it beautifully. Cruelty can be very imaginative, and that scares me. Jesus Christ, survivors. So they literally are using the same old playbook. That's why we have to know. We have to see this. We have to see what it was like, see what was done, see what they're doing again, and stop it. At least tell everybody about it. Because if they're going to pull this shit again, they're not going to be able to do it in a vacuum. They're not going to be able to do it quietly. They're not going to be able to do it under the cover of respectability because irritating little white British women like me are going to be shouting about it because I don't like it. Simple as. So the system itself didn't need the black codes to survive. The black codes just made explicit what the system would then continue to do implicitly under the covers for the next 150 years. What is that? Any person of color will be able to tell you. Criminalize blackness. Just for being black. Then use the criminal justice system to extract labor from those people you've criminalized. Then point to the constitutional amendments and say, perfectly legal. And they're right. It was. Which brings me on to the area that I'd been looking into for quite a long time. And it was the recent SCOTUS decision that kind of pushed me to do the trilogy, the three-pronged piece on this. And that is the for-profit prison system in the United States. And not just the United States, which we will come on to. So it starts with convict leasing. You have the loophole, you have the black codes. Now you need somewhere to send the people you've arrested, and you need someone to pay for their upkeep because you've got to feed them. Not a lot, but you do have to feed them. Enter convict leasing. Now, the convict leasing system operated across the American South from the end of the Civil War until, depending on which state, the 1920s and even as late as the 1940s. It worked like this. A state would arrest people, overwhelmingly black men, under the black codes and their successors. Those men would be convicted in courts where they had no meaningful legal representation before judges who were part of the same political system that wrote the laws in proceedings that sometimes lasted, minutes. They would be sentenced to months or even years of hard labor, and then they would be leased, hired out to private businesses, plantations, coal mines, turpentine camps, railroad companies. Some of the worst offenders. The businesses paid a fee to the state. The state kept the money. The prisoners, nada, zip. They got nothing. And the businesses received something better than enslaved labor in one crucial respect. They had absolutely no long-term investment in the survival of their workers because they could just go buy another one. It's horrible. I'd like to name some of those businesses because, just bring in the receipts. Not all of them. Sorry about the hair. I've got to have the fan on because otherwise I will just wilt in front of you, and that's not going to be pretty for any of us. Yeah, these aren't just obscure historical footnotes, companies long forgotten. Some of them are names you will recognize, even if I didn't so much. US Steel. Through its subsidiary, the Tennessee Coal, Iron and Railroad Company, they operated coal mines in Alabama using convict labor well into the 20th century. The Louisville, and Nashville Railroad. The Georgia Pacific Railroad. Turpentine operations across Florida and Georgia. I love that Amy's giving me hair advice, but then it's not all flowy and romantic and British and whimsical. So shh. It's designed to be really annoying for me and everybody else, because not always the smartest when it comes to forward thinking. Plantations, of course, still a thing across Mississippi and Alabama, all built in part on the constitutionally sanctioned forced labor of mostly Black men. Now, my source for this was Douglas Blackmun, and he is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who spent years documenting the system. And he found records of men being arrested, convicted, leased, and worked to death and then replaced, in a cycle that bore no meaningful distinction from the chattel slavery except in the paperwork. He titled his book Slavery by Another Name. That name is not hyperbole. That book is well worth the read if you want to learn more. Then we have the case of Green Cottenham. Green Cottenham was a young Black man in Alabama in 1908, 43 years after the end of the Civil War. He was arrested for vagrancy, in inverted commas. He committed no crime. He was sentenced to 30 days hard labor, but he was unable to pay his court costs, so his sentence was extended. He was leased to Slope 12, a US Steel subsidiary coal mine in Shelby County, Alabama. He died in that mine 4 months after his arrest. He was not a criminal. He was a young man who was Black and poor and alive in Alabama in 1908. The system treated those facts as sufficient. He's one of thousands, probably tens of thousands, maybe even more, because the records were not always kept, and when they weren't always preserved. Convict leasing itself was eventually abolished, not because of conscience, but because organized labor objected to the competition. That just settled, yeah? They abolished convict leasing because paid labor didn't appreciate being undercut by the free labor of convicts. And that's why it was abolished. And there were also a series of exposés in the early 20th century, which made the system very, very briefly embarrassed enough that some states wound it down. But wound it down is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Some states did phase it out gradually. Some just replaced it with state-run prison farms that were functionally identical. Enter Parchman Farm, otherwise known as Mississippi State Penitentiary. This operated from 1901 as a working cotton plantation, hey Mama Kay, using prisoner labor. Men were picking cotton in a Mississippi State prison camp into the 1970s. My lifetime, this was going on. Hey, Gordon. The facility was the subject of sustained legal challenges before reforms began. It remains open today as a maximum security prison. We have to sustain the noise. We have to be there. We have to support the litigators. We have to support the lawmakers. We have to support the loud voices saying, not on our watch, buddy. What does Glenn call people? I forget. If you remember what it is that Glenn calls people, that's what we need to say. Not on our watch. Mine's gone blank. Not on our watch. Sports! Not on our watch, sports! Hell yeah! You can do it. We may not be able to stop you, but we're certainly going to make sure that everybody knows what you're doing. All right, sport. Like, oh, look at you. Aren't you all good little Glenn groupies? I love you. In that weird kind of, distant sort of, what's it called when you have I'm losing my words today, and that's why I have a script, because it's the nerves. It's not really, I'm old and menopausal. So that psycho, the relationship people have with AI, where it's not an actual thing. It'll come to me, or it'll come to one of you more likely. So what happened next? Well, it will not surprise you to hear that the loophole was never actually closed. The system never stopped. It just evolved. Because that's what happens. By the mid-20th century, overt convict leasing was largely gone. But the 13th Amendment's exception clause was still there, still valid, still constitutional, still available to anyone who wanted to abuse it. That changed in the 1970s and the 1980s with the rebrand. Bring on President Richard Nixon. In 1971, he declared a war on drugs. And if I'm not very much mistaken, we've all been fighting that war ever since. It is probably the longest war in history, and I don't think we're winning. Just going to go out on a limb with that one. Not seeing an awful lot of winning on the war on drugs. His domestic policy, Nixon's domestic policy chief, John Ehrlichman, later gave an interview in 1994, which wasn't published until 2016. That is one of the most explicit admissions of deliberate racist policy intent in modern American political history, in my opinion. And I'm going to tell you what he said because I think you need to hear it. Quote, "The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news." Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. What's changed, people? Just the words. Behavior's still the same, isn't it? As I'm sure as Americans you will know, and for anybody who doesn't, or anybody who's outside I want to say four walls of the United States, but it's not quite like that, is it? Outside the borders of the United States. The war on drugs dramatically expanded the prison population. Mandatory minimum sentences for drug offences meant that people, disproportionately black people, because that was the design of the program, were receiving years or decades in prison for non-violent offences. The prison population in the United States roughly tripled in the 20 years between 1970 and 1990. And then it would more than double again by 2008. Someone had to house all these people. Someone had to feed all these people, clothe all these people, clean all these people, and Gordon's got it in a nutshell. Somebody saw an opportunity, and that just makes me sick. I can't imagine being that person who thinks, oh, I could make some money out of that misery and suffering. Awesome. So what happened? In 1983, Thomas Beasley and Dr. Robert Krantz formed Corrections Corporation of America in Nashville, Tennessee. Their pitch was simple. Government was bad at running prisons. The private sector was better at running everything. Therefore, the private sector should run prisons. Quod erat demonstrandum. It is so proved. They secured a contract to manage a facility in Hamilton County, Tennessee, and the private prison industry was born. Woohoo! Let's all celebrate that particular birthday. Now rebranded as Core Civic, that happened in 2016, and that, surprisingly enough, was after years of negative press, which kind of tells you something if you're a thinking human. The company today operates over 60 facilities across the United States. Its primary competitor, GEO Group, operates over 100. These are publicly traded corporations. They have shareholders. They file quarterly earnings reports. They hold investor calls where executives discuss occupancy rates and revenue projections. The language of their financial disclosures is the language of the hospitality industry. Beds, capacity, occupancy, being applied to human beings in cages. And I can see some of you are obviously far more educated on all this than I was, because yeah, absolutely. All the things you're saying in the chat, the cocaine, powder's fine, crack's not, because who uses powder, who uses crack? More people in US jails than any other country per capita. We will get to that. It's a business, and that's disgusting. And Summer, you're supposed to be poorly in bed. Get back to bed. Private prison revenue from 2023, so just 2 or 3 years ago. This really astounded me. Not because it's a big number, but because of how big the number is. And it may be just my naivety, but I couldn't believe. I knew, and I've said it, and I've said it before I even knew much about it, that the for-profit prison system in the United States is just slavery by another name. Wait till you hear what they're making out of these slaves. Core Civic's annual revenue for 2023, approximately $1.9 billion with a B dollars. GEO Group annual revenue that year, approximately $2.4 billion with a B dollars. Combined, that's over $4 billion generated by charging governments to house people in cages. They're as good as cages. I don't care if they're not made with bars and metal. They're fucking cages. Both companies are listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So what's an empty prison, folks? It's lost revenue. Oh, we swear our tits off, Mama Kay. Yeah, absolutely. This is the potty mouth party. Come in, pull up a pew and swear your absolute heart away. Yes. So empty prison, lost revenue. So what can we do to make the big bucks and keep the shareholders happy? Make it full. And then we pull a profit. This is not a metaphor. That's a business model. And it's built on the constitutional right to compel the labor of convicted persons, to force people in prison to work. And that's not just criminals, if you think about it. We'll come to that. So, who fills the cells and who writes the laws? Let's go there next. As was already mentioned by my absolutely freaking fantastic, fucking fantastic. Nice, Mama Kay, nice. I like your style, girl. Mamacitas out there. The United States incarcerates more people per capita than any other nation on earth. More than Russia, a country led by a man the West routinely describes as an authoritarian. More than China. I'm sorry, it's your president. I can't say it any other way now. I would never say that. I apologize if there's anybody in the chat who is either Chinese, Chinese adjacent, or even knows somebody from China. I apologize. It's just, I can hear that awful man saying it in my head. China, a country with a documented system of mass political detention. And here's a good one. Guess which little Middle Eastern country, which somebody had to go and liberate because of the way it treated its people, convicts fewer people than the United States. Yeah. Iran. More than Cuba, more than every country you've ever been told to worry about on the grounds of human rights violations. Let me just state that slightly differently for you because, you know, somebody's got to be the winner in this race to the bottom. The land of the free incarcerates its people at a higher rate than any other country on the planet. Doesn't feel all that free to me, but what do I know? I do have the luxury of a very wide ocean in between us, and for that I am eternally grateful. I mean, I'm sad that I don't get to be closer to you awesome people. We can't easily meet up for a cold beverage, but, you know, I feel a lot safer than I would if I was where you are, and I am sorry for that, and that's why I will not shut up, because I can do this. I can do this quite safely without too many repercussions. So I'm gonna. Nothing else to do. Sorry, Donnie. This is it. So let's have a look at US incarceration and racial disparity, shall we? Because, yeah, we knew that was coming. Approximately 2 million, with an M, people are incarcerated in the US at any given time. 2 million people in your country aren't at liberty to walk around freely. Now, a lot of them, I think we're all quite pleased about. But as we said, that is the highest per capita incarceration rate in the world. Is that because Americans are really, really bad people? Is that because Americans are inherently criminals? I just don't think so, because I've not met everybody from everywhere, but I've met some really nice Americans. In fact, I don't remember ever having met a criminal American. Now, that's just a very small sample size, but it just doesn't feel, from what I've seen from the awesome people that I see and hear, that you're all freaking criminals. Just my perspective. So how do Black Americans make up those 2 million people? Well, they are approximately 13% of the general population at the time of getting these statistics. They make up approximately 38% of the prison population. Hispanic Americans is not much better, approximately 18% of the general population, approximately 23% of the prison population. Native Americans incarcerated at roughly twice the rate of white Americans, significantly higher in some states. And no, if you're an ignorant little white girl, hello. That is not because these communities are inherently more criminal. There have been lots and lots of really good, really detailed, really credible peer-reviewed studies into it. There's something else going on. The disparities are not accidents either. They're the product of policy decisions made deliberately over decades. And some of those policy decisions were made with direct input from the corporations that profit from incarceration. Sorry, I just get a little bit angry. Who's heard of ALEC? A-L-E-C. I hadn't. So I will tell you, we've got a me and a not me. So there's people who know, people who don't know. So the people who know can correct me if I go wrong, and the rest of us can learn, because that's why we're here. The American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, was founded in 1973. Isn't that a song, Karma? Alec, Alec, who the fuck is that? Oh no, that was Alice. Sorry, my bad. And if you don't get that joke, you've not been hanging around enough British people. Look it up. Roy Chubby Brown, horrendous misogynist racist. So maybe don't look him up. Comedian, in inverted commas, in the UK. And he had a song, Who the fuck is Alice? It's quite catchy, but, you know, really fucking horrible. So unfortunately, it's one of those things that stays in the postmenopausal brain. So ALEC was founded in 1973, before I was born. Not a lot before I was born, but enough. It describes itself as a non-partisan. I'm doing the face for anyone who's just listening to the audio. I'm doing the really face. Organization that promotes limited government and free markets. Project 2025, I'm hearing you say. We'll have a look at that in a couple of weeks' time. What it actually does is bring together state legislators and corporate funders to draft model legislation. So ready-made bills off the shelf, pop into your local legislature shop, put the bills in your shopping basket and go check them out. The legislators of these states can introduce these bills into their own state houses, and very often there's hardly any modifications made at all. They just pick them off the shelf and sell them on. Now, for much of the 1990s and the 2000s, ALEC's Criminal Justice Task Force included representatives from Corrections Corporation of America. The task force produced model legislation that included mandatory minimum sentencing laws, truth in sentencing laws requiring prisoners to serve larger proportions of their sentences before being eligible for parole, and the 3 strikes law, which imposed life sentences for a third offence regardless of severity. Now, I don't want people committing the same offence again and again and again. I do not want little Bobby Annoying coming round and nicking my car every time he gets out of prison. But I also don't think little Bobby Annoying needs locking up for the rest of his life for nicking my car. I mean, get some perspective, people. There must be a way of stopping little Bobby Annoying from nicking my car that doesn't involve basically taking his life away from him. Don't nick my car, Bobby. You know, I need it. But who does it benefit? Well, we've answered that, haven't we, folks? Cui bono. It's always cui bono. I do love me some Latin. Sorry, it's British thing. British public school thing. Public school is private school. It's paid for school. Ugh, let's not go down that rabbit hole. So every single one of those legislative approaches increases the prison population. Longer sentences, harder parole. I know. Igor just put it beautifully. Maybe if little Bobby Annoying had some reasonable job prospects and a functioning economy where he had an alternative, a different choice than to nick my car, maybe he'd make that choice instead. And maybe we're all responsible for that in some way. But still, I don't care how many times he nicks the car. He's not being locked up for the rest of his life. For God's sake, there's something we can do to help him stop nicking my damn car. Please. Oh, stealing. Sorry, stealing. Nicking's a very, very, very British thing. Yeah, stealing. Grand Theft Auto. Look at me and my gaming knowledge. It's almost like I'm one of the kids. I'm sorry. I'm doing a bit of a Glenn going off on a tangent. Is crime any less of a problem in the UK? Well, now that's a really good question, isn't it, Igor? Igor asks, is crime any less of a problem in the UK? Now, the incarceration rates would suggest that it's much better here because you're locking everybody up. I don't think that reports you see about crime taking over are anywhere close to anything that resembles reality. There are pockets of crime. There are the usual crimes, acquisitive theft, domestic disputes, violence against women and girls is still a big problem. We have the crimes. We don't have the guns. Well, we do, but not, we're not allowed to have them. So it's different crime. And it probably mirrors the same kind of patterns that you guys have been talking about in the chat. Areas of poverty, areas where there is racial tension. And I'm not saying it's in a particular racially heavy area. It's in areas where bad actors have come in and created tension between one race and another race. At one point, we had flipping machete-armed groups of young men in the West Midlands. So think Birmingham. We say Birmingham here, not Birmingham. So Midlands over on the west-hand side, so your side of the country. Sikh and Hindu. It was two predominantly Indian religions going against each other because racial tension between those two religious groups had been stirred up. Alcohol, yeah, alcohol is a big, bad, ugly thing still. But yeah, and where is there more abuse of alcohol? In areas of more deprivation, in areas of more poverty, because it's fucking hard to cope with life when everything is just too hard and nothing's going your way. And I don't judge a single person for needing a few drinks to get through that shit sometimes. So I don't know the answer. I will find a crime stat for you and I will post it with the video of the show so that we all know. I would imagine it's similar, but, you know, without the gun violence. We do have gun violence. I just saw an alert today that over the bank holiday, we just had a bank holiday, like you've had Memorial Weekend. Um, I didn't actually get around to reading the article because I was preparing for the show, but I saw a notification pop up from BBC News that a woman had been shot over the weekend. See, a woman being shot makes the BBC News. That's the difference here. Oh, and Summer would be a great person to get a perspective on crime, what with her being many years law enforcement in Canada, north of the border. So always a great perspective. Maybe we'll look at crime at the Mamas meeting this week. Maybe we could do that. Maybe that would be a nice follow on. Let me know in the chat what you think. 20 years sober this year. Gordon, 22. Not that I'm bragging. I'm just saying, like, we're like almost like sobriety siblings. And we've got other awesome friends of Bill. I don't know if that's how you got sober. You don't have to get sober that way. It's just the way that myself and my other friend did. And yeah, we're loving, I say we're loving sobriety. Yeah, you know, it's life, isn't it? It's fucking difficult. And sometimes it's even more fucking difficult without a drink. And there she is. There's our Laura Not Luma. That is 90, 100, 110, 120, 36 effing years of sobriety. And that's why I was drawn like a little moth to a beautiful Alabama flame to that lady when we were just in the chat. Sorry, we're really going off topic, aren't we? Everybody, stop it. Everybody, stop me. Chat amongst yourselves. We're nearly there. Let's move on because this is serious. It's all right for us to just have a moment, take a breath, take a pause, and just, oh, look, I forgot we got Amy, our unofficial, unpaid, but very much loved team administrator in the chat. Look at those. You've got United States homicide rate 5.7 per 100,000. Canada, I missed it. The chat went too fast. Let's go back down. I can say it aloud. So United States, 5.7 per 100,000 violent crimes. Trend decreasing over 25 years. Firearm involvement high overall. Crime varies by state. Canada, homicide rate 1.9 per 100,000. Wow, that's less than half. Violent crime trend increasing over 25 years. Firearm involvement lower than the US. Overall crime varies by province, as you would expect. And I think I saw the UK there, Amy. United Kingdom, England and Wales, because the reason why Amy's got that statistic, and she is absolutely spot on to have that statistic, is because policing is devolved in the UK. It's a bit like a states issue. So Scotland and Wales, since devolution, they have a lot more power over a lot of local issues, local in inverted commas, and policing is one of those. So, sorry, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So the crime statistics for the UK are for England and Wales, and Scotland and Northern Ireland have their own separate crime statistics. So it's 1 per 100,000. Violent crime trend mixed. Firearm involvement very low. Overall crime 6.6 million police recorded incidents. Survey estimated crime 9.4 million incidents because people don't report. And I don't know what it's like in the US, but we have actual laws. No, it's not laws, but there is an understanding that the police will not come out to a shop, no matter whether it's mum and pop's little corner store or whether it's fucking IKEA. They won't come out if the value of the goods is under a certain amount. I think it's £200 now, but that could be wrong. But yeah, they will not come out. They will not investigate. I've had my car stolen a long time ago, so I don't know why little Bobby, what's his name, was coming up on my radar, because I've not, touch wood, not actually had my car stolen in a number of years. But yeah, I had my car stolen, and and the police, by the next day, I had a letter on the doorstep, so they had to have posted it the same day I reported the crime, telling me there was no evidence and they wouldn't be taking it any further. And that just hit me so hard. It's like, my car's been stolen and there's nothing I can do about it except claim on the insurance, which will cost me money in so many different ways. There's the excess, there's the extra I will need to find to buy a new car. There's the higher insurance premiums. Yeah. So little Bobby, what's his face, can nick my car and I have to pay for it, which feels really bad if we're not even going to bother trying to have a word with little Bobby, what's his face. Anyway, let's get back onto Alec, because I hope that none of you have got shares in any of these organizations and you're trying to get me off the topic, because Alec are particularly bad, pernicious actors. Let's just quickly recap. So for much of the 90s and 2000s, Alec Criminal Justice Task Force included representatives from Corrections Corporation of America. Task Force produced this model legislation, off-the-shelf legislation that they would give to the legislators. They would take it to their state legislations and just basically pass it. We've got those rather heinous examples, which basically meant more prison places, more people in prison, more days spent incarcerated, more beds filled, more revenue, because that's what it's all about. So, Alec and the legislative pipeline. In 2002, journalist Bob Sloan began documenting the relationship between CCA, the Corrections Corporation of America, Alec, and mandatory minimum legislation. His work, published in The Nation alongside Mike Elk in 2011, traced model bills from Alec task force meetings, which were attended by CCA lobbyists, all the way to their introduction in state legislatures. Alec disbanded its Public Safety and Elections Task Force in 2012 after sustained public pressure. Sorry, Igor, you distracted me, so it's all your fault, and I can't take responsibility for my own inability to speak and read at the same time. Alec is the American Legislative Exchange Council, and it was designed to put they promote limited government and free markets, to kind of like matching corporations with government contracts, is the way I read it. Oh, Neuro. I will have to catch up with you, Neuro. I apologize. I'm running over because we've been chatting away, but you know, this is real stuff. This is not just a history lesson. Nobody comes here for that. Well, you might come here to learn a bit of something, and that's great, but we come here to talk about it, to see how it's manifesting in all our lives. So, yes, so they disbanded their Public Safety and Elections Task Force in 2012 after sustained public pressure. The laws it helped, though, remain on the books. The sentences are still being served. And people are still suffering because of this deal brokering. The system doesn't need to be explicitly racist to produce racist outcomes. We've seen that. We've talked about that. We've heard wise people talking about that with the gerrymandering. It doesn't have to be a gerrymander along racist lines to produce racist outcomes. And surely that's what we should be more focused on, the outcomes, not the semantics. That's just how I feel. The system needs to be designed in a way that ensures the same communities bear the same disproportionate burden. And that's how it continues, generation after generation after generation. And it's not an accident. That's the architecture behind it. And the architecture doesn't need intent to function. It just needs to be a thing. So where does that bring us? Nearly to the end, you'll be pleased to hear. Now we have the current situation. We'll move it into the present, right up into the present. We have ICE and the new frontier. So if you were thinking, which none of you probably were, that the story ended with CoreCivic and GEO Group and mandatory minimum sentencing, it didn't. Most of you are already sitting there going, no, it didn't. It expanded. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, everybody's favorite agency to punch, metaphorically, because we don't believe in violence and we certainly don't condone it. ICE was created in 2003. In the aftermath of September the 11th, it absorbed the functions of several previous agencies and became the primary federal body responsible for immigration enforcement and the detention of undocumented migrants. I am only telling you stuff you already know. I'm aware of that. But just in case there's anybody ever listening to this who doesn't know, just filling in the background for you. Now, ICE outsources the vast majority of its detention operations to private contractors, and we have seen ICE detention centres popping up all over the place in the hands of private contractors. And any one of you who is doing anything you can, however small, to make things difficult for those detention centres to spring up in your communities, I salute you. And I thank you, because it's not something I can do from this side of the pond, but we're all going to find something we can do to stop this. And we're doing it. We're all here, for starters. So approximately 90%, 90, of people held in immigration detention in the US are held in privately run facilities. GEO Group and CoreCivic are the dominant operators. See you later, Deborah. Same companies, same model, pay per bed per night. Under the Trump administration's second term from January of last year, detention numbers have risen sharply as mass deportation operations expand. GEO Group and CoreCivic stock prices surged, as you would expect, and as I find absolutely abhorrent and disgusting, following Trump's 2016 election. Investors understood that more deportations means more detention beds filled in the meantimes. And that doesn't surprise me, Gordon, if those facilities do not. No, they don't permit inspections, but they're supposed to. Oh, that's another whole nother rabbit hole we could go down. It was never about removing the worst of the worst. You knew that. It's about making money on the back of people who have looked for a better life in the United States of America. Simple as. Here's where the financial incentive becomes not just troubling, but structurally catastrophic. GEO Group and CoreCivic, between them, donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to political action committees supporting Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. In the months following his election, their stock prices surged because investors understood that a Trump administration meant more deportations, more detentions, more beds filled, more revenue, more, and the financial markets made the connection explicit that the political discourse tried to leave implicit. But we're not daft. We get it. Let me tell you about Irwin County Detention Center and the whistleblower there. Are you with this one? Do you remember this one? 2020? So for those of you who haven't heard this story, in 2020, nurse Dawn Wooten filed a whistleblower complaint about the Irwin County Detention Center in Georgia, operated by a private contractor, LaSalle Corrections. The complaint alleged detainees were subject to mass hysterectomies without full informed consent. Women reported being operated on without understanding the procedures were permanent. The DHS, Office of Inspector General, investigated and found serious deficiencies in the facility's medical practices. Multiple women reported unconsented procedures. The facility was operating under a federal ICE contract paid for by you taxpayers, generating profit for a private corporation. And that is really the tip of the iceberg when it comes to medical abuse of minority communities. As I say, I'm keeping that behind a paywall because not because I want to make money from it, but because I don't want to talk about some really absolutely disgusting, abhorrent things for clicks. The information is all on the internet. You can go and find it for absolute free. I'm just going to pull it together in a document for anyone who's a paid subscriber so you can read it. But I don't feel comfortable entertaining an audience with the stories of horrific abuse of Black and brown people. It's just doesn't sit right with me. I'm sorry. So, as I said, it's a very, very old story, medical abuse of minority communities. It runs right from the eugenics programs of the early 20th century, which were studied and admired by the architects of Nazi Germany. Right through coerced sterilizations documented in California prisons as recently as, wait for it, 2013. Coerced sterilizations in California prisons in 2013. Right up to the horrors going on in the Irwin County Detention Center in 2020 in Georgia. The through line is unbroken. The bodies change, but the system persists. And there's always more bodies. ICE detention is just the latest iteration of a model that began with those black codes we talked about all those minutes ago. It's the 13th Amendment's exception clause applied not just to citizens convicted of crimes, but as I mentioned earlier, people whose only offense was crossing the border. The constitutional authority is different. The moral architecture is identical. Criminalize a population, detain them, profit from the detention. Tell me that's not slavery. We didn't abolish slavery ever. We franchised it, and then we opened new locations. Slavery coming to a town near you. Now, as you know, and we'll finish on this because we're running on a little bit, I'm based in the UK, and I want to be clear about something before I make the comparison. I'm not saying we're the same by any stretch of the imagination. Wonderful Amy has given us the stats to show that, you know, we've got problems, but they're not the worst. What I'm saying is we're not as different from the United States as many of us would probably like to believe. And I'm saying the direction of travel matters. The direction we're heading is the important thing. So in the UK, we do have private prison operators. Serco operates several prisons in England and Wales, including HMP. Our prisons are called HMP, Her or His Majesty's Prison, Loudon Grange. Sodexo Justice Services operates HMP Forest Bank and HMP Bronzefield. Now, HMP Bronzefield is the largest women's prison in Europe. Yay, go us. G47, despite the 2012 Olympic security debacle where they couldn't organise the protection of a piss up in a brewery, and fraud scandal that was exposed involving tagging contracts that didn't exist and resulted in them having to pay back tens of millions of pounds in fines to the government, remains significant in the criminal justice contracts gimme in the UK. In 2019, the Chief Inspector of Prisons in the UK published a report on HMP Birmingham. We've already mentioned Birmingham, operated by G4S, formerly Group 4 Securicor, but they changed their name because apparently their abuses made them unpopular. Where have we heard that before? It described the prison, the Chief Inspector of Prisons described the prison as in a state of, quote, absolute crisis, with violence, drug use, and squalor at levels the inspector said he had not seen in 30 years of inspection work. 30 years. The government stripped G4S of the contract and took the prison back into public management. But G4S kept all their other contracts because, of course, they did. Now, let's talk about disproportionality, because this is where I need you to stay with me. We in the UK have to resist the temptation to say, that's America, we're different. They treat their minorities badly. We're not like that. Really? Racial disproportionality in the criminal justice system in the UK, let me tell you. Black people in England and Wales are stopped and searched at approximately 8 times the rate of white people. Black people are more likely to be remanded in custody before trial, i.e., imprisoned before actually being convicted of anything. Black people are far more likely to receive custodial sentences for equivalent offences. So same offence, black person, white person, you're out on bail, you're stuck in prison. Black people are overrepresented in our prison population relative to their share of the general population by a factor of roughly 4 to 1. So it's not as bad, but it's bad, and it's too bad. Then we have the story of Child Q, which is truly distressing, and I don't necessarily encourage you to read up on the experience of Child Q, because it really is quite horrific, and I found it really distressing at the time. But then, then we had COVID and we all calmed down about horrible abuses of black and brown children, because, exactly. This is a story of a 15-year-old black schoolgirl in Hackney, which is one of the areas of London, one of the boroughs. She was strip searched by Metropolitan Police officers, 15 years old. This happened at her school in 2020. She was menstruating at the time and told the officers, I'd really rather not strip all the way down because it's a little bit embarrassing because I'm menstruating and I'm only 15 years old, for fuck's sake. She didn't say that last bit. That was me. What was her terrible, terrible crime that required a strip search that urgently? She was suspected of carrying cannabis. And how much cannabis did they find on this poor girl? None. No appropriate adult was present for this search. Her teachers had referred her to the police, if I remember rightly, on the suspicion of a smell of cannabis. A safeguarding review that was conducted following this found that race was, quote, likely a contributing factor. That's not America. That's London. That's only 2020. We've all got a long way to go, people. And then we're no better when it comes to immigration. I don't know if you've heard of Brook House Immigration Removal Centre. It's been quite widely in the news in the UK. It's quite scandalously in the news in the UK. So Brook House was a facility adjacent to Gatwick Airport, operated by, yes, everybody's favourite failed up security firm, G4S, sorry. A 2017 BBC Panorama undercover investigation documented detainees being physically abused, mocked, and degraded by staff. And yet we point at Ben Gvir in fucking Israel abusing the Gaza flotilla people. What's the difference? What's the difference? You don't abuse people in detention. You detain them. It's not complicated. I don't remember a single person within living memory, no problems, Mama Kay, whose conviction has been for, I don't know, 40 lashes or hard labor. Do you know what I mean? That's not degrading and abusing people is not in any laws that I know of, certainly in the UK. That is not an acceptable punishment. It just doesn't exist. So why is it happening? As I said, the operator at that time, Group 4 Security, and that same company who lost HMP Birmingham for running a prison in the state of absolute crisis. Still operating, still being given contracts. We still have a lot of work to do in the UK. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination building a case that the UK and the US are equivalent. I'm building a case that the logic is the same. The logic that says this community is a problem we need to manage. This body can be searched. This person's liberty is a variable. This population's overrepresentation in our criminal justice statistics is unremarkable. Nothing to see here, folks. The warning is not, this could happen here too. The warning is, this is happening here at a smaller scale, at an earlier stage, granted, and with far less public attention, but that's not a good thing. I mean, the public attention thing. We're not America, not yet, but we're walking a road with clear signposts, and the signs are not pointing towards justice. And that's why we're all here. That's how we all know each other. That's how we all got together. That's what's the word I'm looking for? Inspired me to do what I'm doing. Because if we're talking about justice, if we're calling out injustice, then they can't sweep it under the rug. And if that's all I'm doing, it's enough. I will do everything I can to do more, but it's a hell of a lot better than doing nothing. And yeah, Tamara, numbers don't make it less egregious. One person here, one person there, one person in that country makes it absolutely disgusting, and it needs to stop. We've just watched the Supreme Court make things arguably harder for minority communities. And we have to speak up. If we give a damn, if we care about other people, well, it's not costing me anything. You know, don't put yourself at risk. You've got to weigh up the consequences to you, your family, your community, and then do something, because there will always be something you can do. Don't put yourself at risk. Nobody's asking for that. Let people like me who've got a great big ocean where they can't touch me. Sorry, that was really childish. Sorry. Anyway, mamacitas, that is where we will leave it tonight. I have taken up far too much of your time already, but thank you genuinely from the bottom of my heart for being here, for listening, for caring enough to sit with the uncomfortable stuff. Because the uncomfortable stuff is exactly where the truth lives. And I'm sorry if that sounds a bit artsy-fartsy, but it's true. If you need to head off now, if prayer and reflection isn't your thing, then you go with genuine love. And we ask you to take care of yourselves out there, because it's a dangerous world. For those of you who would like to stay for a few more moments, I'm going to invite you very shortly to connect with whatever higher power speaks to you. Whatever it looks like for you, you are welcome in this space. But first, if tonight's episode meant something to you, please consider sharing it. Recommend us to a friend. Leave a like, click the hearts. If you're not already subscribed on Substack, come and find us. Your support, whether it's free or as a paid subscription, is what keeps me coming back and keeps the cafe lights on. Paid subscribers, as I say, will get access to the full companion document. I made a special companion document with a kind of timeline for today's episode. If anybody wants that, you just need to subscribe. It's a lot cheaper than a lot of the really, established good people who you might subscribe to. But it's have a look. If it's something that you're interested in, I try and put extra stuff in there for you. Yeah, and all the receipts as usual will be in there. That's where they will be found. So if you need to fact check me, you're going to need to pay a couple of quid to go over to the paid section and check all my receipts. But they're there, and you're more than welcome to do so, because we do not say it if we cannot show it, and we want you to be able to show it too. So if you liked our show, please recommend us to a friend. If you didn't like it, you can always recommend us to an enemy. Win-win. And now, if you would like to stay for our closing reflection, I invite you to take a breath. Let it out. Settle in and connect with your higher power in whatever way feels right for you. Tonight's reflection is taken from the New Testament, Psalm 82. And if you're ready, I'll begin. God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. How long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. The wicked walk about freely, and all the foundations of the earth are shaken. Rise up, O God. Judge the earth, for all the nations are your inheritance. Amen. Thank you once again, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Love doing these things, however painful, uncomfortable, and some right absolutely shocking they are. A better educated me is a better me. So I just want to share that with you. And for now, though, we have been going for a little while, and I'm sure you've all got lives to get on with. Thank you for those of you who managed to stay the whole time. You are awesome. I have been mama. I have been very hot. But we've only got one more day of this trauma, and then I will be my usual chilly, wrapped up British self. I look forward very much to seeing you next time for anyone who can return. But for tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the cafe is now closed. Good night, everyone.